one might think that on one level, it's not fitral or natural, from a person's nature, at least from one reading of Islamic tradition, that atheism is almost an aberration of a natural state. So when Muslim scholars speak of fitra, that people have an inherent quality that God has equipped them with to be knowing or to be capable of knowing and accepting God, that somehow know that they buck that natural state. It would be like it's a bad example. I was going to do one, but I better not do that one. And some people might see it like that it's a aberration of the human norm. So it's like these people are just expressing, they're just in the gene pool. They're the ones that aren't going to survive. That kind of thing. Perhaps one reason why people are atheists is that people who are religious do a lot of bad things, and they don't see the benefit of believing in a God, because if it was such a good thing, there'd be more good from religious people. That's some people's arguments why they don't want to accept God, because they see lots of negative things coming from the believers. I mean, like one could ask the question, Islam is not the religion of choice today in America. I mean, people become Buddhist and Hindu and this or that. People aren't running, our mosques aren't having their doors beat down to convert. Why is that? Probably part of it has to do because of people's perceptions of what it means to be a Muslim. And at the end of the day, one could say, perhaps it is in human disposition not to believe in God, because if God has equipped us with godly qualities of autonomy, individuality, great potential. A human being has the potential to do many things. I mean, one human being can harm many people or benefit many people. Think of someone like Bill Gates, for example. He's a billionaire. If Bill Gates wants, with all his extras of billions of dollars, he could probably set up an institute to solve many of the world's disease problems and more, if he wanted to. He could fund all the doctors to research that in universities, if he wanted to. He could help set up programs in impoverished parts of the world, more than probably he's doing, if he wanted to, if he has the resources. But he doesn't necessarily do that. A person can have all these capacities. So humans have this great capacity. And that sort of is a Pharaoh complex. Like Pharaoh in the Quran, he competes with God. And God has placed with this capacity to be competitive with him on a certain level. That we take we abuse our nature, and we place for ourselves godly qualities. Worship me, I am your Lord. And when you're a kind of person who sits on the throne and wants to be in charge, the last thing you want to do is bow your head to some invisible God. Perhaps that's also a reason why they're atheists. I think some people are atheists because what I've read is that, what I experienced is that religion puts moral and physical constraints on them. So if you free yourself from God, you free yourself from a lot of the constraints of the world, social constraints, etc., etc. I mean, if you're a Muslim, you have to pray 5 times a day. You got to not eat certain things. And you live in America, pray 5 times a day is a hard thing to do. Or not eating pork is a hard thing to avoid, etc., etc. So why go that path when it's so much easier not to sometimes? Although, that's the first question. Another question. That's it.
Question.
Ask it. Who made this food?
There's one more question.
Is this like Nigerian food? I'm just curious.
Yes,
it's like Turkish food. You guys are big Turks.
Can we have a question from Luca, one of our sisters here?
I like food.
This is the last question from the kids before we go to the general public.
What inspired you to become a Muslim, and what steps did you have to take?
Pardon me?
What inspired you to become a Muslim, and what steps did you have to take?
Oh, I think I answered that partially. But to become Muslim, you just have to believe in one God, creator of heavens and the earth, and Muhammad is his messenger, and Allah. Then you get a packet from the Saudi embassy, a Quran and a Hadith collection, and and you're ready to go. Your life is set. If they gave you a Hajj ticket, it'd be even better. But they do that. You'll get that in a packet. They should give you a packet. Every convert should get a Quran, Sahih Bukhari, and a trip to Mecca. And you just want to review Shahada again just to get that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now we'll be taking questions from the general public. So if anybody has, okay, we have a question here. Hold on.
Assalamu alaikum. My question centers around the concept of good and evil, like you espoused earlier. I'm just confused. It appears you kind of focused on the materialistic good and evil, meaning the non-existent human nature good and evil. Can you kind of explain why some people end up being bad and some are good, and how can if we talk about the concept of God's existence, why would He create some people being bad and why would some people not be good? So,
Okay. Bismillah. I think it goes back again to that question. What I tried to make some clarity with was that human beings have this great potential within them. I think that's a given. I think we see it whether you're a believer in God or not, or any type of deity or anything beyond. You can see human beings are quite unique. Look at us. Look what we've done on this planet. So we're quite distinct as a species, minimum. There's no doubt about that. Nothing like us. We don't know of anything in the natural world that is like us in complexity and imaginative capacity. Nothing. We don't know of anything like that. So clearly we're quite unique as Homo sapiens, Linnaean, bipedal hominids, from a naturalist perspective. We become even more complex as we live together in groups and we become a social creature. Our civilizations, of human complexity, of how we live together, how we try to interact with one another. But underlying all that is that we have all this, we are human beings and we are people of great passion. And that passion in the sense of our dispositions. And we are creatures of violence, it's clearly there. We're also creatures of great gentleness, it's clearly there. We're creatures of ugliness, it's clearly there, and beauty. So I think our nature is, that nature is, because I would say from a Muslim, I think from a Muslim belief perspective, looking at from my window of Islam, looking out through the world, with in my Islam house, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us these capacities that we will, it gives us greater fullness of being to be this way. If we were like angels, from a quality perspective of angels, then we wouldn't even have free will. We'd just be going around praising God. But even the Quranic narrative about Adam being created, and the angels say, they say, hey God, this is Naim's paraphrase of the Quran. Hey God, we worship you and praise you and acknowledge you, and you're great and good, and this creature, this man you're going to make is going to go on the world, is going to do all, and we know he's going to do lots of bad stuff. Maybe he just forget you, and in the process of forgetting, do even worse things, because there won't be any moral constraint on him in some way. Maybe something like that. That's an angel's narrative. And God's response, Naim's version of the story, I know what I'm making. And that creature will be endowed with things that even you don't have. And yes, there will be a challenge for that creature. But some of them you will see will be greater than you yourself as angels. Even when they praise me in not knowing me directly as you know me, that praising me will lead them to great and wonderful things. From knowing me, they will do great things. And this, I think, is, they will be tremendously compassionate. They will overcome their mere physicality. They will overcome their selfishness. They will overcome those qualities. Didn't the Prophet Muhammad say he was raised up with to lutamma makarim akhlaq? I was raised up. The purpose of the revelation is to increase and make people's character traits better, make them more godly in godly qualities of the positive virtues, or to take their negative qualities, anger, etc., and rein them in and use them for positive things. So you can be Sayyidina Omar and have anger, but now use your anger in a positive way, not for harm. You can let your anger be for justice, your anger be for personal accountability, or in order to get other person's right, not just for self, for yourself to have revenge on someone, or just to have dominance over someone. That's possible. So I think that evil or evil outcomes that we do, because we're given the liberty of that choice, and we're also given enough information to learn how to rein that in. If you follow a prophetically guided way in your life, if you mirror Muhammad ﷺ, I honestly don't think that too much evil could come from that person towards someone else. You can harm yourself, yes. And you may make mistakes with your family, immediate family, but I think if you're a Muhammadan person, you'd be very limited in how much evil could come from you. And you'd actually how much good would come from you. Like Sayyidina Abu Bakr. He was the person who knew the Prophet the best. He's a human being like the rest of us, walking with the Prophet, knowing him intimately, and yet in the morning he made sure that he visited the poor. He took care of the orphan. He had a janazah. He did the good for people because he brought forth the abundance of good, which is prophetic. And yet you could be Abu Jahl, reject the prophetic image, reject the prophetic placement before you, and yet strive for self-aggrandizement, strive to suppress your slave, to harm women, to do things like that, in which he did. He manifested those qualities. But those were choices that both Abu Jahl and Abu Bakr chose in building a relationship with Muhammad ﷺ. So I think that evil, is there because we have been given that capacity. And as for another issue, by doing evil, Allah allows himself to express himself that even angels could understand. And I've talked about this before. By doing wrong, making mistakes, harming another person, you can understand what it means to do good in a better way. You can understand justice in a better way. You can solicit God in qualities that otherwise, when you harm someone, you have to seek God's forgiveness. So now you can know God as Ghafur and Allah as Rahman in a different way. You can understand to sympathize with another human being that you are responsible and you have a co-shared responsibility of rights and responsibilities, not to overstep another person's wealth or their physical body. And so that helps us to cultivate that with us. So it's positive even from evil, if you take it. And so, that's why, for example, a janazah, which is a pretty horrible event for the person who dies, if he's, but can be an ibra, an instructive event for the congregants to pray over his body. If you want to, you learn from it. I think there are ways we can look at evil that way, and it helps us to overcome some of that dichotomy of evil and good and what's the problem. I think if you start seeing it that way, I can talk more about it, but that might be enough. Okay, anything else?
There are a few questions back here.
Back there, whoever back there is.
What is the difference between a belief in God and a choice in God?
I think some will believe because that's just what they were raised to do. That's taqleed. They follow because they were taught this. They were taught, like my sons. My sons probably believe because their dad is a convert to Islam. And they formulate, since dad's that way, I'm that way. I've been taught that. They were taught to hold certain things. But I told my son Omar to come today, and I don't want to pick on Omar, but Omar has had very good questions over the years, and he's had private conversations with me about having bad thoughts about God, and that's a normal thing for kids to do that, and there's no problem with that. But I asked my son to come today because I said, now you're 13 years old, and though you need to be really reasoning out now why you have this belief. You need to know why you believe in God in the first place. And I think that you can never really believe in God. You can't really have unless you really believe in the sense that you convince yourself rationally that it exists, then that's when you actually can come to that deity fully. If you haven't rationally convinced yourself that God exists, then you only believe him because either you fear he may exist, he might get back at you one day, or you want something out of him, or because your dad's going to beat you to make you pray, or something like that. But when you know in the trueness of your being that he probably really is, and you reflect on it, then that will just automatically push you to want it. Because you'll start thinking, well, how is this deity? What is it like? Is it beautiful? Well, I know what beauty is. I know what beautiful girls look like. I know what beautiful cars look like. And if beauty originates a lot as Jamal, I want to know what beauty is then. So maybe that will motivate you to want beauty from God Himself. And so maybe that will drive you towards God because you want to know beauty, for example. It's an abstraction. So I think that some people believe because that's what they were taught. Some people believe because it is belief. It's like, I don't know, but just in case, it's a inshallah Russian roulette. I won't get a bullet in my head. I'll be okay. But I think real belief should be based upon you have considered the evidence for and against God, and you convince yourself there's enough evidence that there is a God. Then you take the next step and try to find out, like I mentioned today, if there is a God, does He communicate? If He communicates, how does He communicate? Does He make Himself known? Does He care about me? That's a big question. Does God care about me? I mean, do you want to worship a God that God cares about you, or God doesn't care about you? I'd rather worship a God that cares about me in some way. I mean, I don't want to be in a relationship with a person who doesn't care about me. Right? You get married to some girl just because you met her on Muslim.com. You have nothing you like. She hates your guts. You hate her guts. You go to the imam. You make a nikah. Ya Allah, you're married. Yeah, that's it. What kind of marriage is that? It's a legal marriage. You're legally married. But it's not it's a relationship in a way. It's a legal relationship, but it's probably not a healthy emotional relationship, right? So what do you want? Some legal relationship with God? I showed one the law. That's the contract deal. I showed one the month. So that's paragraph number 2. The law I made a deal with you. Or do you want to know God and take the contract to its own outcome? The contract opens up a pathway to relationship, and that relationship you grow and